arrest comedy writer Graham Linehan at Heathrow Airport. And this one, Britain's new thought police, how Labour plans to police your online speech. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet. Without objection.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer two unanimous consent requests. I'm not going to challenge the farce as much as the gentleman and others, but two that record letters to you, one to you and one to Commissioner Verkunen, pushing back on the framing of this hearing from 30 EU and U.S. academics.
Thank you. Without objection. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Farage, welcome to the United States of America. This isn't your first time here, correct?
Correct.
You were here in 2024 in Milwaukee, weren't you?
I've been coming here since 1982 on a very regular basis. I work for American companies.
What
for many,
purpose
many
were
years.
you coming to Milwaukee for? Why did you come to Milwaukee?
I've been in Milwaukee many times. I think that particular
in
event
2024
was a convention.
the convention, the Republican
I think
convention.
that's right. I think you're right.
The Trump convention.
I think you're right. Very good.
Where Trump was coronated.
Well, he won, didn't he? I mean, yes.
He had already won. We already knew who had won.
It's called political
and it was
parties.
his coronation, and you attended, and you also attended Trump rallies, correct?
I've attended lots of Trump rallies.
Make America Great Again rallies,
Yes.
many of them. And you
Upbeat,
publicly,
optimistic, happy, wonderful, joyous
you
events.
publicly
yes.
endorsed his...
I thoroughly enjoyed them. I've even spoken to the
You
couple.
endorsed him for president, and you attended his election night watch party.
I did.
And you consider Trump to be your mentor, correct?
No.
He's not your mentor?
No.
But he is somebody who you want the support of, and you have the support
Yes,
of.
I do. I think he's a very, very brave man.
Because you are getting ready to run for Prime Minister of Great Britain, correct?
Oh, I've been trying for years, yeah.
And as it stands right now, you head up a party. How many seats in the Parliament are there?
651, if you include the Speaker, that is.
650.
Yes.
And how many how many seats does your party hold?
How many seats do the opinion polls say we're going to get next time? Is that your question?
I mean,
I
the
see.
numbers don't lie. You only have 4 seats, right?
I'm afraid so, yes.
And so you are indeed the leader of a fringe party.
Oh, I'm a fringe, all right. Don't worry about that. Yes, absolutely. Everything I've ever done.
And as a fringe party leader seeking to run for Prime Minister of Great Britain, you need a lot of money in order to blow up like the MAGA movement has blown up.
What you need is a message of truth and a message of hope. And
Well, you need money also, right?
Money's helpful, but it's not the primary thing you need.
So the first thing that came out of the chair's mouth this morning during his opening statement had to do with Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And you're carrying water for Elon Musk today, aren't you?
From what I can see, Elon Musk is abusive about me virtually every single week. But it's a free country, so
but you
he's
never
entitled
stopped
to do
trying to ingratiate yourself with him.
Wrong.
Well, I mean,
wrong.
You are familiar with the fact.
Wrong.
You are familiar with the fact, Mr. Farage,
I have had a public fallout with Elon Musk.
that Donald Trump's campaign benefited to the extent of $250 million from Elon Musk.
How much?
You are familiar with that, correct?
How much did Mr. Zuckerberg give to the Democrats? I mean, this is what happens, and people are.
Well, he didn't give any money
on Musk. Let me be clear.
To the Democrats. He was sitting behind Trump with the rest of the tech bros, and you are here today to impress all of those tech bros, including Elon Musk. Isn't that correct?
I'm going to answer your question very, very honestly.
You need money from Elon Musk in order to get elected Prime Minister of Great Britain. That's the bottom line. Isn't that correct?
We consider all day, as long as the chairman allows us. I don't mind. I had a very public falling out with Elon Musk.
But you're still trying to get some money from him, though.
Over a political issue.
It's not about the prior disputes.
I'm sorry,
you're trying to ingratiate yourself with the tech bros by coming over here and trying to.
Can I get a cup of coffee or something?
And you're arguing.
We'll be here a long time.
What you're arguing is that the citizens of Great Britain should pay a tariff if these tech companies are not allowed to violate the laws of Great Britain.
No, I'm not. That was a falsehood put out by the British Prime Minister today.
You didn't say
at
in your
Prime Minister's
statement.
questions. I have never.
In your statement.
I have never suggested any of the
statement,
kind.
you don't
My
call for
statement is very
tariffs
clear.
as tools to
My
force
statement is
Great
very
Britain's.
clear. My statement is very.
You are not
It
calling
might surprise
for,
you.
You are not
Mr.
calling
Johnson.
for
It might surprise you to know
tariffs and
that,
trade
that
sanctions.
trade, you may not know this, but trade between our countries is actually rather important. You are the biggest investor in our country, and we're the biggest investor in yours.
Done is
And-
come
and
over
Time of
friends-
the
here.
gentleman from
and
Georgia has
friends-
expired, but the
What
gentleman
what you've
should be able
done,
to say
sir, is
some kind
come
of
here
response.
to the United
Regular
States
order,
to
Mr.
argue
Chairman.
The
that
time-
your
He's been
citizens
rude,
should
he's been
pay as
disgusting,
tariff.
he's been hilarious.
Hang on.
No.
The gentleman's time has expired. I feel like we should give Mr. Farage a chance to respond to one of the many questions he was not allowed to respond to. So we'll give you 30 seconds, Mr. Farage, and then we'll move on to our next one. Because I know Mr. Farage does have to leave in about an hour, so we want to get through as many members as we can.
Number one, I had a public fallout over a political issue with Elon Musk. I can't be bullied by anybody. I haven't changed my mind. Last time I looked, he was being spectacularly rude about me yesterday. That's life. If we believe in free speech, we live with it. What I have made very clear.
Fixated on.
What I have
Hang
made.
on.
Sorry, no, this is my turn, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, you got another
Thank you,
15
Mr.
seconds.
Chairman. What I've made perfectly clear in this paper is the situation we've got with successive pieces of legislation, including now the Online Safety Act, is a danger to trade between our countries, and allies and friends and trading partners have honest conversations with each other. I hope many American companies and politicians have honest conversations with the British
done
government.
it.
I've not suggested sanctions at all in any way.
Good luck on your race.
The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd remind my colleague from Georgia that President Trump was openly nominated after decisively winning the primary votes across the country. That's in open contrast to the Democratic nominee, who has decreed the nominee of her party in spite of the fact she did not receive a single primary vote. So I would be a little careful if I were him about talking about coronations. I do agree with my Democratic colleagues that we need to be on guard against suppression of free speech, whether it's coming from the left or the right. But I disagree with them that the chief executive regulating the executive branch's communications or conforming executive agencies and grantees to executive policy is somehow a threat to free speech. The executive branch is designed to speak with one voice, a voice chosen every 4 years by the people. And I disagree with them that suing for defamation is an infringement on speech in a legal system where the truth is an absolute defense. The threat to democracy is from the government regulating other people's communications. Now, we're now discovering that the Biden administration used the FBI to pressure tech companies to censor the communications of the American people over a free discussion of everything from COVID policy and origins, the Russian collusion hoax, Biden family influence peddling, climate change. I myself was the victim of this censorship when I warned of the damage that the COVID lockdowns were causing. Now, democracy assumes that the best way to separate truth from lies, or wisdom from folly, or good from evil, or love from hate, is to place the two of them side by side and then trust the common sense and good judgment of the people to know the difference. But this assumes that the people have full and unfettered freedom to express themselves and to challenge the claims and opinions of each other. Now, some of our colleagues seem to be suggesting that we should transfer that prerogative from the people to the government. That's the very definition of authoritarianism. Mr. Farage, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you know, we are, as citizens, we should be free to make our minds up, to express our opinions, to a large extent to make our own mistakes, provided, and we all know there's a limit to free speech. You know, the professor talked about incitement earlier, and of course, you know, we would be absolutely joined together on that. We don't want incitement, we don't accept incitement, and if people put out something irrational or insightful, but very quickly put their hands up and apologize and learn their lesson, that's kind of how the world is. I do not want government to be the arbiter of what I should think.
We have a word for that. It's demos kratis, rule by the people.
So yes,
democracy.
I'm with you on that. I also agree with you that COVID, I touched on this earlier, It was during COVID when rational debate about many important issues, be it mask wearing, be it lockdowns, rational debate on these things was frankly stamped out, and this was supported by big social media companies, many, not GB News obviously, but many TV stations, etc. It's a very dark period that we're coming out of.
In this country, what we're discovering is that was being done under pressure by the FBI, directed by the executive branch of the government under Joe Biden. But just briefly, how did this happen to the UK and the EU, and what lessons should we be drawing here today?
Well, we joined the EU half a century ago, or the EEC as it was then called. It was a huge mistake, in my opinion. We forgot about common law, the kind of law that you guys have always enjoyed too. We sort of gradually transferred to a European way of thinking. We incorporated a Human Rights Act, which kind of meant really that, as opposed to being born free, under a human rights regime, the state gives you your rights, for which you're supposed to be incredibly grateful, but they can take them away whenever they like. So we lost our bearings. The UK lost its way. It became obsessed about doing things a European way, countries, frankly, that don't have that history of liberty, freedom, and democracy that we do.
Finally, what do you see as the shape of things to come? Are we going to regain these freedoms or lose them?
Well, ultimately, the people have to get what they vote for. And one of the reasons that we are seeing an extraordinary political revolution that is happening in parts of Europe, and if you believe the polls, what is happening in the United Kingdom right now is we want a government that comes in and gets rid of all these laws and starts again. And starts on the basis, yes, we want to try and protect kids, and we will do whatever we can that is practical to protect kids from serious harm online. But we will get back to the idea that I could insult you, you could insult me, Mr. Raskin and I can have our chats, but we do it, in a spirit that's not insightful and in a way that honors those who built our great countries. Thank you. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Well done. The gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It wasn't too long ago that Democrats and Republicans on this committee together agreed to undertake a 16-month investigation into the anti-competitive practices of big tech companies. I represent many of them in Seattle, and proposed bipartisan legislation, which actually passed this committee, to restore fairness and competition for consumers and small businesses. That included the American Choice and Innovation Online Act, or ACOIA, which included similar common sense structural solutions to what the EU included in the Digital Markets Act. And it was a real recognition that these big tech companies are squelching competition and innovation, and that hurts consumers. It's a big turnaround then that suddenly the Republican majority wants to do something as absurd as use trade negotiations to help bolster big tech in Europe when EU has undertaken the very smart solutions that fight back against big tech monopolies and protect consumers and small businesses. Maybe it's linked to the fact that these big tech companies are now pouring money into Donald Trump's campaign funds. I don't know. Maybe it's because they're making all kinds of deals to screw consumers and preference giant corporations in exchange for campaign contributions and a 24-karat gold plaque to Donald Trump, like the CEO of Apple just recently did. It seems to me that the Republican Party has suddenly turned its back on small businesses, on competition, on innovation, and yes, even on free speech, which is apparently the topic of discussion today. In fact, one of our witnesses here claims to represent, one of the Republican witnesses claims to represent small and medium-sized app developers, but his organization gets more than half of its funding from Apple, the very giant corporation that those same small and medium-sized app developers are trying to fight. Make it make sense for me. Now we have this hearing centered around so-called free speech and so-called censorship, not here in America, but in Europe. Well, what about right here at home on U.S. soil, the censorship by the Trump administration, the Republican Party, on anything that they don't agree with? Let's just take a recent example. Ramesa Ozturk, a PhD student at Tufts University, wrote an op-ed in the student newspaper calling for the university to divest from Israel. It was a simple exercise of her First Amendment free speech rights. She committed no crime. She didn't bully or harass anyone. She didn't incite violence towards anyone. Action was totally peaceful. And yet, what happened? In March, the Trump administration revoked her student visa, sent masked men to kidnap and disappear her, forcing her into an unmarked car, and detained her for 45 days. Professor Kaye, how does this kind of abuse, utilizing the immigration system, in this case for now, can extend to U.S. citizens, to green card holders, to anyone else? How does this hinder the free speech rights of all Americans?
Well, we've seen already that American citizens have been caught in the enforcement of immigration laws over the last, and outside of the immigration laws over the last several months. But I think we can look at it from two perspectives. I mean, one is it's a clear violation of a student's free speech right, as you just explained it, when they're detained and set up for deportation solely because of an op-ed that they wrote. But it's also an intimidation for anybody who would write anything further. Anybody who's in that same kind of visa situation now is not going to be writing that op-ed. And that's not just a harm to them. That's not just chilling their speech. That's also a harm to all of us who would benefit from hearing those kinds of views.
In fact, right now, the Trump administration is reviewing all social media of visa applicants to see if they've posted any anti-Trump or pro-Palestinian sentiments. How does that affect our free speech rights?
Well, it's the same answer. It's a deterioration of our public debate in this country. It's exactly this kind of, I think that Mr. McClintock had said before, putting side by side different ideas. And that's an interference with that.
So quickly, another example. In June, a Spanish-language reporter named Mario Guevara was live-streaming a gathering of Americans protesting against Trump's immigration policy. The police arrested him on bogus misdemeanor charges that were later dropped. A few days later, he was detained by ICE. Now we've got a government that arrests a student for writing an op-ed, filters the speech of visitors, and arrests a journalist for covering a protest. How does that compare to free speech practices of other countries?
Well, it does compare with authoritarians who regularly use law enforcement in order to transform journalism into a crime. This is a major global censorship problem, and we're seeing it in Georgia. And we see it in this context that is not just a one-off. It's part of, I think, a systemic approach to a free media in this country. That's one, and perhaps the harshest example, because I understand that the journalist remains in detention, but it's part of a systemic approach, I think.
Similar to Russia and China, places like that. Mr. Chairman, I yield back. I have some unanimous consent requests.
Do you want to go now, or do you?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. I ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from the Open Markets Institute.
Without objection.
Another one, a letter from the Tech Freedom Association raising concerns with the FTC's inquiry on censorship.
Without objection.
And a final one from I think it's the App Association, and it's titled, Apple is top funder of lobby group that says it represents small developers.
Yeah. Without objection. If I
And
could,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I have one more here.
okay, go right ahead.
This is an article entitled, The False Choice Between Digital Regulation and Innovation.
Without objection.
Thank you, I yield back.
Quickly, Mr. Reed, is your association fighting Apple?
Pardon me?
Is your association fighting Apple? What the
Fighting Apple?
Fighting Apple?
We disagree with Apple on multiple issues, as well as for all of our sponsors. Our membership is the small businesses that many of you have met when we've had our fly-in every year.
Okay, great. Seems to me your association uses Apple. That's where your apps go. I don't think you're fighting Apple. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized for 5 minutes.
Professor Kaye, was the Centers for Disease Control correct in 2020 about the handling of COVID? You know, the chairman laid out all the things that we now know are debunked. Was the Center for Disease Control correct in how they went about their business?
I'm not a scientist, so I can't speak to that. I mean, I remember the time, like we all did, a time of great fear as
Shutting
to what
down
was happening.
schools, things like that, that have set kids behind. See, because it's to Representative McClintock's point that wouldn't this administration want to change some people that you talked about that are in the Department of Health Services? Shouldn't they change them if they were wrong about really the seminal issue that has come before this generation? Shouldn't they change those people?
Well, that's just not my understanding of why people have been.
Are you familiar, Professor Kay, with the case Berenson versus Biden, which is a censorship case where Alex Berenson, a reporter, was deplatformed on Twitter?
I'm not familiar with that one.
I would suggest that you take a look at that because the Biden administration weaponized themselves against Mr. Berenson and stifled his speech on Twitter. What college are you a professor at again?
University of California, Irvine.
How many classes are you teaching this semester?
This I teach one class right now.
One class this semester. Mr. Farage, I want to thank you so much for coming to the great state of Wisconsin, of which I represent part of it, including Milwaukee. I hope you had a good time there.
I've always had a good time in Milwaukee, no question. Wonderful breweries, friendly people, love it.
You're welcome back anytime. I want to thank the ranking member for giving us a tutorial on free speech. Mr. Farage, did you instruct anyone on this panel, including the chairman, to instruct us to stifle the ranking member's speech? Did you?
No, absolutely not. Of course not.
Can you comment on the key issue before the far right that we heard about earlier? What is that key issue in Europe right now that the far right is heavily engaged in?
Well, if you're in the United, I'll speak for the United Kingdom. If you're opposed to illegal immigration on a mass scale and the huge cost to the taxpayer and the risk to our communities, then and if you like the flag, our national flag, then apparently you're far right.
So that illegal immigration issue that was very informative to the election in 2024 in America, the same thing is happening in Europe? Is that accurate?
It's a very similar argument in many, many ways, and therefore the definition of far right, I think, now applies to about 2/3 of the British population.
So I think about someone who's very famous from your country, Ms. J.K. Rowling, who wrote one of the finest series of books, the Harry Potter series, that has ever been in print, who I believe is self-defined as a liberal, as we call them in America. Hasn't she even been threatened for a position she's taken in regards to transgenderism?
Yes, she very much comes from a liberal wing of politics historically, but she's taken a view that women should be safe in women's spaces. That means changing rooms, etc. That's all she said. And by the way, that's something that our Supreme Court recently actually did back up, the fact that there are fundamental differences. And this is not to launch an attack on anyone that's trans, just to bring some common sense in. And she has faced cancel culture and abuse on a huge scale.
I would just, one other comment in regards to the ranking member's opening statement. He was saying that we are stifling speech here in America, including PBS, by defunding them. I would suggest that the ranking member look at the news that came out in the past week. It is very good news for PBS, where the Ford Foundation and other foundations have said they're going to put in tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, to make sure that they stay on the air. Protecting the American taxpayer, I think that is a great thing that we were able to do with the One Big Beautiful Bill. Final question for Mr. Price. How is the problem going to be fixed, and can America help?
Yes, America can help. The spotlight that has already been shone on the problem by the administration, by the amazing work that this committee is doing here, is hugely welcome by those of us who support the human right to free speech. We have people who are suffering under prosecutions, unjust prosecutions in Europe right now. I've outlined a lot of them in my written submissions, and it's only because of the support that's coming from this side of the Atlantic that we're able to see possibly a brighter future.
And we will continue those efforts.
Thank you.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman, yield back. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, when I was a professor of constitutional law, I used to teach my students that freedom of speech is like an apple. And everybody wants to take just one bite out of the apple. Somebody doesn't like left-wing speech. There's a bite. Somebody doesn't like right-wing speech. Somebody doesn't like feminist speech. Somebody doesn't like sexist speech. And everybody just wants to take one bite. But if we let everybody take a bite, at the end of the day, there's no Apple left. It's all gone. So if you want to defend free speech and you want a society that's defined by free speech, you've got to accept even the speech you oppose, the speech that you abhor. Now, Professor Kaye, we want to try to bring some objectivity to the conversation. I looked up the Reporters Without Borders rankings of every country in the world, according to press freedom. Norway was number 1. North Korea was number 179. It's like a totalitarian dungeon. The UK was number 20. The US was number 57 under Trump, down from 45, where it was before. Russia, which some people here lionize, was at 171, right? So if we were going to undertake a serious study of the state of press freedom all over the world, for example, where should our focus be?
I appreciate that question. I have a very long list that I could highlight.
But just tell us methodologically, quickly, how we should go about doing it if we wanted to undertake this in a serious way.
Absolutely. I mean, I would really use the lens of what do we need as a democracy in order to be well-informed, in order to make choices about our democracy, to make choices about our health. What do we need? We need an open press. We need open government. We need access. We absolutely don't want to see websites scrubbed, as this administration has done. So I would look at it through that lens, through the lens of what we need in order to have a democracy.
Gotcha. Mr. Farage, first of all, to be called charming by you, a man of your evident erudition and dazzling brilliance, is undoubtedly a Lifetime Achievement Award for me, so I will hold it closely. But I wanted to ask you about your commitment to the freedom of speech universally. I think it's a principle that you advocate for everyone, not just for people who are in your party or people you agree with. You said that there should not have been a protest against the Gaza war in the UK. And then when it went ahead, the police refused to shut it down. You called them gutless for not shutting it down. Do you regret having opposed that, given that there was no violence there and there were 700,000 people who wanted to express themselves that day?
I have not opposed people standing up and protesting in favor of people living in Gaza at all. There was one particular day, and it was the Sunday nearest November the 11th, which was when we had big memorial services in London, and I think a march being allowed to go ahead on that day would have been a mistake. Any other day, fine.
Oh, I see. Who gets to decide that?
Well, I think actually something that is embedded in the country, something that is absolutely fundamental to vote.
That's why we have a written constitution. You might take that idea back to the UK with you.
Well,
because the freedom of speech applies 365 days a year here under the First Amendment, not 364 or 363, depending on some politicians heckling the government and telling them to shut down free speech.
We have allowed mass pro-Gaza demonstrations in London, weekend after weekend.
No thanks to you. All right, let me change.
This was
let me try another one.
particularly sensitive day. That's all.
I got you. It was a sensitive day. And I thought that's what the freedom of speech was about. You have a right to engage in speech that other people consider offensive or insensitive. But in any event, you've made yourself clear, Mr. Farage.
64 days a year if they want.
You've made yourself clear to your constituents in Claxton today. Let me ask you this. You've banned journalists from your political events that you disagree with, haven't you?
No, in fact, I'm the only political
Really?
leader
At your
in Britain.
convention, you didn't ban journalists and revoke their credentials?
You know, I take, the average press conference, I take 25 questions.
No, that wasn't my question. Mr. Farage, we're politicians, so we see what you're doing. I'm asking you a direct question.
Well, thank you. I'm very pleased
I'm
you
asking
do.
you a direct question, and I hope you can answer it. Why do you ban journalists who oppose your views from coming to your events? Why did you tell your party, why did you tell the local government not to do interviews with your local newspaper?
I am the most open person to any journalist.
Undoubtedly, you're the handsomest man in the world. But I'm asking you a different question, okay? That's not my question. My question for you is, and it's legit, why do you ban journalists that you disagree with from your political events, like from your convention?
I don't.
Okay, and you say you've never done that?
I can't think, if I go back the last 25 years, I can't think of banning anybody. But I mean, maybe somebody else did. But look,
I see. It was somebody else who did it.
I do more. I take more questions.
All right.
From journalists.
Do you have
all
any
the other
objections?
leaders added up together.
Okay, Mr. Price, let me ask you. You're an honest man. Do you have any objection to the things you've heard about what Donald Trump is doing in the United States of America, going after law firms, for example, banning them from federal buildings and federal courthouses, stripping them of security clearance, saying they can never get federal jobs or contracts because he doesn't like something one of the lawyers at the firm did? Do you think there's a First Amendment problem with that, as our courts have found?
There's a lot of information you've put into that. It's good to talk to you again after London.
Yeah, have you followed that at all?
I haven't. I have to be
I see.
perfectly honest with you now.
Okay, do you have any problems with anything Donald Trump has done with respect to free speech and freedom of expression in America? Or you just haven't followed it?
I'm not as well. There are plenty of people here better informed on American matters than I.
And we are. So thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for your indulgence. I yield back.
I think the gentleman, my guess is Mr. Farage takes press questions probably as often as President Trump does. These are two guys who aren't afraid to talk to the press and take any question that comes to them. We've seen that display time and time again. The gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it was an honor to be with you and the ranking member as we had the chance to see firsthand what's going on in the EU and in the UK. Maybe this Raskin Farage show could become a recurring event. It's gotten very interesting on both occasions. But I'd actually like to direct my questions to you, Mr. Price, at first. It's good to see you again. I think that those of us on the trip were really alarmed by the ways in which the tide is turning against free speech in the UK and the EU. And I think that there actually was quite a bit of bipartisan agreement among the members of our delegation on a number of these issues. So I was hoping you could give us a little context of what you think explains this. And I think that we understand that not every country needs to have has a First Amendment or needs to have the exact same standards or the exact same exceptions or the exact same ways that the law is applied. But we've always, I think, felt it important that we have an alliance with our European allies around the issues of freedom that stands in contrast to authoritarian regimes around the world, like in Russia, like in China, places where they don't have free speech. And so to the extent that these values are fraying among our allies, then it really harms our ability to stand up for the values of freedom around the world. So what do you think is going on? How can we sort of strengthen our alliance with our European allies around the issue of freedom of speech?
Thank you, sir. Well, what we've seen, sadly, over many decades, and it's accelerating, has been a consistent use of overbroad, vague laws to crack down on speech that's regarded as provocative or unorthodox. And I can give you, and I have given examples of the clients that I'm involved in representing, where they've been simply speaking about their faith publicly or where they've been offering to talk to people. So things have reached a crisis point, though, and this is why I think it's important that Vice President Vance and the administration has intervened. And one thing I would say, without divulging any contents of conversations, but Representative Raskin and I had quite a good conversation about just how bad things had become in Europe. And I agree with you. I think there is a bipartisan realization, certainly on this committee, and I commend the work that it's doing, about the nature of the problem in Europe. With the DSA, though, we find then the European Union stepping into speech, regulating it, and bringing that restrictive model global. And this is where I think really the work that's been happening here is crucial, because we can't allow that to happen, because we're going back to COVID-style censorship all over again.
Thank you. And of course, it's doubly concerning when this actually implicates the free speech rights of Americans. But I would hope that moving forward, we can try to work with our counterparts in Europe to try to get back to having these shared values around freedom of speech, and we don't continue to see a divergence. Mr. Reed, I also wanted to ask you about the DMA, because based on, I know you represent smaller app developers, but we also spoke with folks who represent Apple and Facebook and others, and it's a matter of public record the way that these companies are now sort of uniquely targeted under this law and the similar law in the UK. And honestly, it caused me to sort of see some of the ongoing negotiations around tariffs and other issues through a somewhat different lens, because the way that American companies are being targeted with the DMA really is a tax or imposes or is a direct transfer of wealth from our country overseas. And these are some of the sort of non-tariff barriers that American countries are now facing. So could you give me your perspective on that and the DMA more broadly?
Right. It's ironic that, as you say, it's a non-tariff trade barrier, but the ultimate biggest loser is usually the smaller and medium-sized companies. Earlier, we heard a member of this committee just talk about bills here in the United States. The irony of those who supported those bills were also billionaire companies. We joked about the fact that it was the trillionaires versus the billionaires who went to war. And the problem when that happens, if any of you run a small business, is the small guy gets crushed. And what's happening with the DMA in Europe is their desire to put pressure on the US companies means that there are fewer services, fewer features, and less trust are available for the smaller businesses to take advantage of. And that's how we get crushed, and that ends up being a, as you say, a non-tariff trade barrier, because it puts the very companies that could compete with these giants at a disadvantage when they have to meet those new tests.
Thank you. And I think that this is going to be an important issue for us to remain focused on as to how we can alleviate these barriers that our companies are facing that honestly are hindering innovation in Europe as well. I yield back. Yield back to the chair.
Real clear on the most recent situation. Maybe I'll direct this to Mr. Farage. So Graham Lineman is an Irish citizen who posted something while in America and then gets arrested when he goes to the UK for some, quote, offensive post online. Is that accurate?
That is absolutely right.
Yeah, that's where this is all headed. That's exactly where this is all headed. The gentleman from California who accompanied us on the trip, when we were so glad that he did, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I also appreciate being invited on a trip and spending time with you and our ranking member, Raskin. Very informative. Interesting looking at the DMA, winners and losers, unintended consequences. According to a recent report commissioned by the EC, the future of European competitiveness, only 4 of the 50 top tech firms in the world are actually in Europe. As a Californian, I found it very interesting that a lot of the European entrepreneurs move out of Europe, move to the US, specifically California, to grow, and then possibly move back to Europe. I'm a Californian, so the health and welfare, the interests of California firms is interest to me. And seeing hundreds of millions of dollars in fines under DMA's nebulous violations being levied against California firms, money that could be best spent on R&D in many ways, is very bothersome. I care about encouraging California entrepreneurs. We have the most successful entrepreneurs in the world today, yet they are essentially being targeted by the EU and other foreign regulations. California, this money is better, again, invested in creating jobs in California. And by the way, a lot of these firms that are actually being fined actually pay taxes in California. Today, California recently passed up Japan to become the 4th largest economy in the world. California is the number 1 producer of ag products in the world, number 1 in terms of venture capital in the US, number 1 manufacturer. We pay $100 billion more to the US federal government than we get back on an annual basis. So despite all the challenges we have in California, we actually know how to do it right. And surprisingly, our workforce, visa holders from other countries, workforce, undocumented workers from around the world that actually harvest their crops. Manufacturing, we are the top manufacturer in the United States in terms of state. A lot of undocumented workers there. So California, we actually can manage pretty well. The best managed state, I would argue, in the union. So Mr. Reid, I'm gonna ask you, given your association with these small firms, how is the DMA affecting our California firms as they try to grow in the European Union?
The ex-ante regulation creates barriers of entry.
What do you mean by ex-ante? Explain that to me.
In simple terms, it means that the European Union is determining the behavior before the bad act has happened. It's before it happens.
So they're fining before the actual behavior?
They're not just even fining, they're setting the rules by which you could be fined. The best way to think about it is they're saying, Mother, may I? If you remember the game Mother, May I? They are asking companies to go forth and say, can we do this? And then the commission says, well, yes, you can, or yes, you cannot. We traditionally in the United States have taken an ex post, meaning, did you deceive someone? Did you lie? Did you cheat? Did you steal? And then you're punished. Unfortunately, the EU is taking a Mother, May I approach rather than a punishment approach. And that harms California businesses because it makes it a lot harder to get in the door.
Mr. Price, you're from Irvine. Sorry. Yes? Mr. Price?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about
Irvine.
California firms and how the DMA. Okay. Well, Irvine, by the way, a lot of biotech, high tech.
I think you might be referring to Professor K.
Mr. K. I'm sorry, go ahead. Mr. K, Irvine.
Yes. Yes, I teach at the University of California at Irvine. I actually wanted to respond to two of the points that you're making, in part because...
You got about 20 seconds. Go.
Thank you. In part because this hearing is entitled as one dealing with censorship, and we're spending quite a bit of time talking about defending companies. And two things I just wanted to mention. One is the DMA doesn't specifically discriminate against American companies any more than it does against California companies. And the second is that I think it's important to think about the other...
Mr. Price, what would you say to that?
In relation to discrimination,
yes.
They've designed the rules in such a way that they almost perfectly encompass American companies, particularly under the DSA. So if you're setting the rules and they just happen to throw a net over a particular target group, I think you can legitimately infer from that that was the intention.
The intention was discrimination?
The intention is to throw a dragnet over U.S. companies and turn them into a...
The intention is discrimination against American firms.
That's precisely what the outcome is.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And before I yield, I also have some articles I'd like to submit for the record, if I may.
Yep.
Letter by Chairman Fitzgerald and myself to President Trump, dated April 9th of this year, outlining our concerns with the Digital Marketing Act. Second, report by European Commission, dated September 24th, the future of European competitiveness, which is failing to translate into innovation. Third article, statement by the Chamber of Progress, dated February 10th, how Digital Markets Act has become Europeans' digital curtain. Number 4, article by the Information and Technology Foundation, dated June 30th, 6 ways the DMA is backfiring on Europe. 5th, article Washington Examiner, July 28th, EU regulations impose heavy costs on U.S. companies. Finally, article in the Journal, Wall Street, the tech industry is huge and Europe's share of it is very small. Thank you, sir.
Without objection, thank you. Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas, recognized.
Thank the chairman. I thank him for holding this hearing. I thank the witnesses. Mr. Price, you referenced Jamie Raskin earlier, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you just real quick, in like 30 seconds, give the quick summary of what the facts are behind that issue with respect to why she is facing prosecution despite having served in Parliament and I believe as a minister in the government?
That's correct, sir. Over 5 years ago, she posted a tweet with a verse from Scripture, and in that tweet, she objected to her church, the Finnish Evangelical Lutheran Church, using church funds to fund the Helsinki Pride Parade. And for that, then, criminal proceedings were launched against her.
And she's been dealing with that for 4 to 5 years, correct?
That's correct, sir. Her case is before the Supreme Court at the end of October.
Facing jail time.
Facing significant fines.
And for having expressed her faith with respect to issues involving marriage in the context of a Bible verse, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And so now we've got, as the chairman illuminated a moment ago, we've got this issue involving Graham Linehan, who here in the United States made a joke and then is arrested in the UK, correct?
Yes, he's being arrested, or he was arrested for comments that he posted while here.
And that's correct, Mr. Farage, you agree?
It is.
And that joke had something to do with, as I've looked it up, trans-identified males and female-only space, and he made some joke about that issue.
That's exactly right.
And so we've got now someone being arrested for alleged transphobia or some sort of hate comment involving a joke on another continent. Now, in the meantime, we've had Mr. Farage talking about Lucy Connolly, right? And her fate, which I understand she got sentenced something like 31 or 32 months for having put out a social media post. Now, that social media post has been alleged to have tied to some incitement. She deleted the post, but the post was in response to violence, right? And on the heels of a whole lot of issues involving crime in the UK. Whatever the connection is, right, we're saying there is crime in the UK. Now, here's my question, Mr. Farage. How do you feel from the standpoint of borders in the UK? Are open borders healthy for either the United States or the UK?
No, they're disastrous.
And are they having a deleterious effect with respect to crime and culture in the UK?
Yes, they are. It's been a debate that's been very difficult to have without being screamed at, but we are now having that debate.
And so now we've got a moment here where we've got someone being put in jail for putting out something on social media that is allegedly transphobic. And so my question is, I wonder what's going to win out? What's going to win out when the questions of Islamophobia and the tenets of Islam mash up against transphobia? What will the determiners of truth in the UK government decide? What will those who make decisions about what we can say and what we cannot say do when these worlds collide? Would you have any comment on that, Mr. Farage?
In the Lucy Connolly case, it's very interesting that this horrific murder of 3 young girls happened. The country was in very deep shock, very deep shock. The government deliberately withheld the truth about who the perpetrator was. And it led to a sea of speculation. It turned out ultimately that the man that committed those murders was in fact UK-born, had not come over on a boat, as was being said on social media. Just goes to show that actually, however bad the news is, people deserve to know the truth about a situation. It stops that frenzy of speculation. Who's going to win these great battles? I think that there is a growing, silent majority, certainly in my country, who object to the two-tier concept that, you know, Lucy Connolly gets 31. And by the way, there were mitigating circumstances for what she said with her own personal situation, but she's arrested very quickly. She's threatened that if she pleads not guilty, she'll go straight to prison and be on remand until the trial, and goodness knows when. We're not defending what she said, but she recognized her error, you know, in a moment of anger and passion and upset, and she withdrew it 3.5 hours later. I think that the answer, Mr. Roy, is that the silent majority will win. The silent majority will win, good will triumph over bad, and common sense will be returned. It won't happen quickly. It won't happen quickly. As I've already outlined, there is coming down the tracks an Islamophobia law, which would divide speech even more widely than it is now. But in the end, common sense, decency will win.
Is Sharia law consistent with Western values?
No.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Farage, thanks for being here, coming across the pond. I'm sorry to hear you're leaving the hearing early.
Well, there's not a question of leaving the hearing early, but I do have other things to do. Yes.
Oh, where are you going?
I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay. Where are you going?
It's not lunch, I promise you.
It's not lunch. You're not going to have lunch.
I don't think so, no.
No lunch.
Sad, isn't
You're
it?
meeting with the president?
I can't remember what the schedule is. It's possible.
You can't remember if you're meeting with the president.
I'm being very polite, and I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing this afternoon, but I can assure you that...
But this is the free speech hearing. You're not going to tell me what you're doing this afternoon?
Free speech is one thing, discretion's quite another, too.
Okay. All right, so you're leaving to have lunch with the president. So, Mr. Farage, I have a question. Have you heard about the Epstein thing that's going on here?
I have.
You have? What do you think about it?
I'm not going to give comment on anything happening in America. I'm here as a witness.
Perfect.
I'm here as a witness.
I'm
here as a witness for what is happening in the United Kingdom and in the European
Perfect.
time zone.
Let me just go through it. So it's been 9 months, right, since we've been meeting in these hearings. We've not had Pam Bondi here, even though we have jurisdiction over the Department of Justice, not Dan Bungie.
The gentleman yield?
Not Kash Patel. I will, 100%. We'll go back and forth. Let me just do my thing.
Okay.
And then
Well, I'm just going to correct. Kash Patel's coming in I'll give you an extra 10 seconds. Kash Patel, the Director of FBI, is coming in 2 weeks, and the Attorney General's coming in 4 weeks.
Fantastic. But still, we're not doing that this week, the week we're having votes on the Epstein thing. So, Pam Bondi gives the influencers, these Republican influencers, a binder. It says Part 1 of the Epstein files. Don't know if you saw it. It was quite spectacular. The Attorney General then says the Epstein list is on her desk. Then DOJ issues a memo, says there is no list. Then, do you have any questions about any of that? We've had no hearings on any of that at all. That, the list is on my desk, then there is no list. Then we gave binders to Republican influencers. This committee said no questions on any of how that transpired at the Department of Justice. Then hold on.
Well, it sounds like you're going to in the next few weeks. So that's a jolly good thing.
Mr. Farage, we can talk soon, but not yet. Okay.
Right.
So then the president comes out and says the whole thing's a hoax. He blasts his own base. He blames Barack Obama. I mean, he hasn't been president for a very long time. Republicans then in committee vote against the release in the Rules Committee. Then Republicans refuse to go back in the Rules Committee because they're getting blasted for their vote, getting crushed by their own base. Congress leaves a day early. Then the administration sends the Deputy Attorney General to meet with Maxwell in jail. He happens to be Trump's former personal attorney. She says something favorable about the president. Miraculously, she gets transferred to a minimum security prison. The president starts talking about how he has the right to pardon her if he wanted to. The leaks to the Wall Street Journal then stop. We come back from break. We have the Massey petition. Comer does a document dump where 97% of these documents are already public. How long has he had those documents? Why hasn't he released them for the last 6 weeks? Does it the day of the vote. Then Republicans drop a non-binding resolution trying to kill the Massey discharge petition. The White House said passing the Massey discharge petition is a hostile act. Wow. That's a lot of distraction and deflection and misinformation. Wait, passing a discharge petition to release the Epstein files, the White House said would be a hostile act. Nope, we have no questions about that. But why? Why is it that we're spending so much political capital to keep this list from coming out? You think the list should come out? You think we should know the people who dealt with Mr. Epstein, Mr. Farage?
I thought I was coming to a hearing on free speech, not process.
Oh, well, listen, but here's the
And
good...
It sounds like you're discussing process.
No. Do you think the list should come out?
I have no opinion on it. I don't know at all.
So we have victims that were sexually abused by potentially people in power, and we don't know who's on the list.
I'm very happy.
Hold on, Mr. Farage. We don't know who's on the list. We don't know who's on the list. We don't know if the president is or is not. I'm not going to say he is or isn't. I'm just going to say these are weird behaviors. We don't know that there aren't other people in Congress that are on the list. Right? We have no idea. Do you think the list should come out? You think people in power should be held to account for these victims who have been sexually abused and assaulted? You think the list should come out?
I think that I'm very happy to come to a different hearing where you talk about legal process.
Okay.
But today,
Will the gentleman yield for a quick question?
Were
you aware that he has already called for the Epstein file to be released? It has been reported that he has called for it to be released.
Oh, yeah, right here, just to refresh your memory.
Yeah, but
I happen to have this.
But that's not
How
what
random.
But that is not. Look, you can ask me if you like about
Do you agree
social
with
security
yourself?
policy.
Do you agree with yourself?
We are here to discuss free speech.
Hold on, it's awkward for your lunch after this? Do you agree with yourself?
No, it isn't at all.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious. This committee has jurisdiction over the Department of Justice.
Yeah.
Why have we allowed Comer to cover this up for the last couple of months?
As I said,
why is this committee not
I
taking
said 6 weeks
jurisdiction?
ago that we will have the FBI director in, we will have the attorney general in, and we are doing that in 2 weeks. You can you can go through that whole list. That whole list, you can do whatever you want to do with. I got lots of questions for the FBI director, including the whistleblower who came forward and told him that Adam Schiff leaked classified information. I want to ask him about that as well as the issues you all want to ask him about. That's why he's coming, so we can ask all these questions and follow the process, as Mr. Farage just talked about.
Mr.
The
Chairman,
gentleman from Virginia.
unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent?
I'd like to enter the political article into the record that Mr. Farage said the Epstein file should be released.
Without objection. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
I thank the chairman. I want to talk about censorship tools that are being used by Europe and protectionist measures that have major consequences for U.S. companies and free expression worldwide. I'm glad to have you all here to get your views on those issues. Mr. Farage, you've called the Online Safety Act a borderline dystopian censorship regime, and many agree, including myself, that the law badly overreaches. One of the most serious criticisms is that it empowers Ofcom to undermine encryption and open the door to not just government surveillance of posts online and public statements, but private messages, raising alarms not just in the UK, but beyond UK borders. Vice President J.D. Vance has warned this could threaten Americans' privacy as well. Do you recognize that this is not just a domestic issue for the UK, but a global one? And if you become Prime Minister, what assurances would you give allies that the UK will not undermine end-to-end privacy standards?
You have my absolute word that a reform government will repeal the Online Safety Act and will go right back, actually, to legislation back to 2010, under which these whole concepts of hate speech have begun to be interpreted in UK law, and we will do that. Do we want to protect kids? This is the big question. Yes, we do. We need to find means, we need to find ways. I half suggested earlier that hardware could be part of the solution, but yes, we want to protect, to encourage and let free speech flourish.
You've said Reform UK has access to some of the best tech minds to design alternatives. How do you propose to balance protecting children without scanning private messages or weakening encryption?
I think, well, as I said, look, I don't have all the answers to this, but the British Prime Minister says he has got the answers to this. Well, if it's about protecting kids, why does the legislation give Ofcom the most extraordinary and frankly arbitrary powers? And why is there the establishment under the Act of an elite police force unit to monitor what is said online? So, it's far better to be honest and say we don't have the perfect solutions than to pretend we have with legislation that is a sledgehammer that misses the nut.
Thank you. Mr. Price, the EU's Digital Services Act imposes liability for so-called systemic risks. How does that chill religious or political speech, and do you see conflicts with First Amendment principles?
That's correct. The systemic risk provision, I think, constitutes a form of content moderation that they're misrepresenting, frankly, in their letters to you. Where the systemic risk provisions talk about, in fact, damage to what they call civil discourse. And we've already seen prosecutions, including clients of ours, who have been prosecuted for, among other things, praying silently, discussing the differences between Christianity and Islam, tweeting a verse from the Bible. So if these constitute systemic risks to civil discourse, the EU has the power in terms of this content moderation provision to step in.
Damage to civil discourse seems a little broad, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Mr. Reid, the EU's Digital Markets Act and the UK's Digital Markets Competition and Consumers Act are sold as pro-competition, but don't compliance costs just burden small app developers?
Absolutely. The problem is that it's interesting, as you talked about how do you do a better job. You asked how do we do a better job to protect children. One of the ways we do it is by empowering parents to be good parents. And one of our deepest concerns is by removing some of the capability of the platforms to curate and provide information to parents about what applications do through a clear, forward interface that they see every day that's useful. It makes it harder to parent, harder to know what apps are on your kid's device, and harder for you to control it. So we absolutely see that not only are there problems with it on encryption, which we agree with you 100%, but we also think it weakens our ability as parents to be in charge of the devices our children are using.
Yeah, these rules don't help parents, consumers, if you will. They just shift power from platforms and from parents and from consumers to regulators, correct?
Correct.
Do these regimes create a level playing field for U.S. firms, or do they advantage European competitors at the expense of American innovation?
Well, the original thought behind the DMA was that Europe had not been successful in creating their own industry, as was alluded to by several other members of Congress, and Congressman Correa noted it as well. Europe's economic potential has slowed while the United States has grown incredibly. We've gone from almost equal in 2008 to a 50% increase in the size of the US economy between 2008 and now. And we think a lot of it comes from the small technology companies that have been creating amazing devices, amazing products, amazing applications that you're all using. And we are disappointed that, that there aren't the same opportunities for the US, for our EU members.
Thanks, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, for years, political extremists, including some of our colleagues, have claimed without evidence that so-called conservative speech is being canceled. But the speech at issue is not conservative political speech. It's hate speech, including incitement to violence, threats and harassments of particular people or groups, and lies about almost everything from election results to health care. And there's nothing conservative about any of that. So today's hearing appears to be one more attempt by these extremists to claim victimhood, promote falsehoods, and normalize radical ideas, all while attacking others. Today, our Republican colleagues claim that our European allies pose the biggest threat to Americans' free speech today. Seriously? There's an all-out assault on the First Amendment in the US, but it's coming from inside the House, the White House, the executive branch of our own country. For the past 8 months, our Republican colleagues have done nothing but cheer on the administration's un-American attacks. Because the truth is, they're all for free speech, but only if it's the speech they agree with. I'd say if you really want to talk about censorship, let's talk about how this administration, with the support of our MAGA colleagues, has tried to strangle speech and ideas that it doesn't agree with, when that speech comes from the free press, college campuses, law firms and judges, library books, the Smithsonian museums, responsible investors, scientists, dedicated employees with deep expertise, and more. We've seen this White House use executive orders, threats and intimidation, illegal withholding of federal funding, raids by masked and armed police, and even sending military troops onto American streets to shut down opposition to this administration's policies. Professor Kaye, you are an internationally recognized expert on freedom of expression and have studied the growing assault on free speech and civil society around the world. In your testimony, you said that the situation in the US raises serious alarms. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, well, thank you for the question. Everything that you just mentioned is alarming. The assaults on the press, on universities, on public protest, all of those things, I think, are the kinds of things that historically the United States has fought against. So all of those things are very problematic. And I think that one way to think about them, perhaps, and it's useful in this committee, actually, in the context of this committee, is to think of those things that the Trump administration is doing as a contrast to something like the DSA, right? So the DSA sees a problem, which I think is a problem shared or perceived on both sides of the aisle, which is massive platform power and also the kinds of content that you alluded to. But the DSA doesn't create any new rules that allow either the European Commission or countries to censor. It is a transparency regime. It's a risk assessment regime. It's actually researcher access. It's actually a tool to give us information about what's happening online. That's in just sharp contrast to the kind of issues that we're seeing in this country, which are very much focused on criticism and content.
Yeah, I think my colleague, Ms. Jayapal, talked about the fact that we had a very robust investigation of big tech in prior Congresses, which has kind of been shut down by a new alliance between big tech and the Republican Party. But it is about dealing with the real issues and the very real power that these big tech platforms have and trying to provide tools for ordinary citizens to fight back against disinformation or harmful content. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about one tool that the DSA offers, it's this assurance that individuals will be able to challenge, to appeal content moderation decisions. That is not something that is allowed or mandated by law in the United States. One other thing just to mention in this connection, I think Mr. Farage mentioned, and it's really just to highlight how hard some of these questions might be. Mr. Farage has suggested the possibility that hardware could be part of a solution to deal with children's access to harmful information. I think there's something possibly there, but it's another form of censorship. I think we should just recognize that restrictions are on the table in the United States, in the UK, elsewhere. I think the Europeans have adopted an approach that makes quite a bit of sense.
Trying to get to as many members as possible. Gentlelady's time has
step.
expired. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Professor.
Mr. Farage has to leave in a few minutes, so we want to get as many members as possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just before I begin, to my friend, he's not here now, Mr. Moskowitz from Florida, there's kind of an old trick in debating. When you're losing the debate on the issue, you change the issue. This is not about Epstein. It has nothing to do with that. And as the chairman so correctly said, the Attorney General is going to be here, the FBI Director is going to be here, and we can talk about it till the cows come home. Second thing is, I believe it was you, Mr. Farage, that said COVID changed our world. And in many ways, more than just a biological disease, what it did to us psychologically, governmentally, philosophically was really bad. And we're still not out of it yet because of what happened then. We're losing our freedoms. We are losing our freedoms, and it's not because of an American Congress. It's not because of American courts. It's not because of American Republicans, and I'm going to even say it's not because of American Democrats. It is due to bureaucrats in Brussels and in London, and in other places as well. It's wrong. It's un-American. I am unabashedly, and I think we all are here, hopefully, pro-American. We should be protecting our citizens. Instead, we're watching foreign bureaucrats come to our country and try to force United States companies to censor humor, satire, and news they don't like. It's backwards, it's bizarre, it's perverse, and it's weird. That's what we would call it in New Jersey. It's just weird, and it's not good. It's the opposite of everything that the United States of America fought for and stands for. And it's a globalist mindset. You know, we can all talk about the issues, but I'm going to keep talking about globalism versus American exceptionalism and individuality. I believe very much, sincerely, that the whole battle that's going on now with the right and the left, what's happening in Great Britain, what's happening around the world, what's happening in the United States, is very much that argument. Individuality, and in our case here in the States, Americanism, exceptionalism, or is it globalism? And like the EU's Digital Service Act and the UK's Online Safety Act are the pinnacle examples, and they are, of how upside down things have gotten in the effort to globalize our society. And that is the ultimate showdown. It is resulting in our losing of our freedom, losing our influence, and the only winner here are some countries in Europe, Russia, China, and others. Europe is spending their time attacking American tech companies, dictating how our platforms operate, how our technology operates, and punishing people for exhibiting free speech. The European model, I'm sorry if I offend anyone, but it is wrong. We fought a revolution to defend ourselves. Men and women pledged their lives, their treasure, their sacred honor, so that they wouldn't have to go through this. And we never thought that Americans would be stripped of that. That's why this moment is so serious. It's more serious than most Americans and people realize right now. And you know, for generations, we thought if we were ever attacked, it was going to be a nuclear holocaust. We thought it was going to be the domino theory. We thought it was going to be world wars. We thought it was so many things. I maintain it's this. If we lose our First Amendment rights and our freedom of speech, we have lost everything and nothing else matters. And internet technology is being used as a vehicle to make this happen. So I have a question for Mr. Farage and Mr. Price. This hearing is really good, and I'm sure we're going to have some other hearings. But more than hearings and talking about it, what is it tangibly, this is a hard question, that we can do to stop it? What is it? Mr. Farage, I'll start with you.
The debate we've had here, I mean, nobody here from any side of the debate has told me that the Online Safety Act is a wonderful piece of legislation. You know, right across the spectrum here, you're having your own internal debates about free speech in America, right, healthy, and what this committee is for. I want to make this argument. Yeah, I know these companies are very big and very powerful, many of the tech firms, but, you know, governments talk to each other, yeah? And it needs the American administration and businesses to have an honest conversation. Brussels, you won't get a hearing. They are fundamentally anti-American, frankly, and I was there for 20 years. I saw it. I do think there is a conversation to be had with the British government about the shape of their legislation and the impact it can have on American individuals, their liberty, and American companies. So I'm calling for, as a result of what's happened, the legislation's clearly doing the wrong thing. I think it is cause for proper intergovernmental debate.
I hope that we have it. And by the way, we have censorship in America. Watch ABC, NBC, and CBS. I'm at the meetings. I'm at a discussion. I see and hear what happens. My wife has Channel 6 on, which drives me nuts at home, and it has nothing to do with the damn stuff that actually happened. And that's the truth. We have it already, and I pray to God we don't lose America. Mr. Chairman, indulgence, and I'll shut up. Mr. Price didn't get a chance.
Quickly.
Yes, sir. You talked about putting pressure on, and I agree that Brussels is a cold house for free speech. But a lot of the regulations actually happening in my own country, in Ireland, in Dublin, where a lot of the tech companies are headquartered, their European headquarters. And it's the Irish Media Commission, or Commission na Meán in the Irish language, which is the ground zero really for a lot of this regulation. And here's where I think the US can do a lot, because there's strong bilateral relationships between Ireland and the United States, is to put pressure on the Irish government to stop the bullying of tech companies. And already X is in the Irish Supreme Court soon against the Irish Media Commissioner. So they're already starting the crackdown. So I would hope that you use your good offices here to put pressure on the Irish.
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of parliamentary inquiry.
Gentleman is recognized.
Why is the witness leaving this hearing early, and certainly without?
He has an engagement he told us about. This is not unusual. It's happened before under Democrat leadership of the committee, under Republican leadership of the committee. We're trying to get through as many people as we can. You've had many of your witnesses who did not ask Mr. Farage a question. Many of your colleagues, if you could have coordinated with them, you didn't go in order. We didn't necessarily go in orders because we wanted to get as many people up front asking Mr. Farage questions.
Could we ask him if he would be willing to stay for?
It's totally up to the witness, but if the witness has to go somewhere, I understand. We were glad that he came. We were glad that we had a chance to visit with him in Europe. So you could have went on that trip and had a chance to interact with Mr.
I wasn't
Farage.
Invited, but next time.
Oh, you were definitely invited. Everyone was invited from the Democrat side. The whole committee was invited. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Georgia for questions. And Mr. Farage, if you can stay longer, we would definitely welcome that.
When I chaired this event in the Palace of Westminster, we had an hour for it because time was very tight, and that was perhaps the source of a slight disagreement Mr. Raskin and I had.
A little bit of confusion on that.
We would have given this.
Each side got an hour, but the whole thing was limited to an hour. And then your side went, and then you called it off.
I was given the instructions. This we've given 3 hours, and I apologize, but no, I can't stay longer.
Okay.
I could send the Constitution down to the White House for the president to read it.
The gentleman is not recognized. The gentlelady from Georgia has 5 minutes to ask her questions while Mr. Farage is still here, and then he will leave when he has to leave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses today. Our First Amendment rights, as you can see, are definitely under attack. Words are very powerful tools, as you've heard them being used here in this hearing, and this administration has gone out of their way to retaliate against our students, news agencies, and others who express views that don't align with their extreme agenda. By using lawsuits, eliminating funding, and even going so far as to send out a memo with a list of restricted words that can't even be used. The actions of this administration have been ruled against in court time and time again by judges from both parties on a basis of abusing our constitutional rights. From freezing funding for colleges because they do not bend to this administration's will, to removing programs that are designed to expand student understanding and access in education, which I'd like to add, increases future opportunities for our Republican constituents as well, and using federal investigation powers to retaliate We are watching the First Amendment be manipulated in ways that this nation hoped that they would never see. Hear it from the judges who have ruled against government bullies who attempt to violate the rights of the American people. U.S. District Judge Sycophant found First Amendment violations in the government investigation into media matters, which he stated is likely to succeed in its claim that the FTC was using this investigation as a retaliation against the watchdog group for claims against a prominent Trump supporter. A clear violation of First Amendment protections, and the cases, they just go on and on and on. U.S. District Judge McFadden, a Trump appointee, ordered that the Associated Press's access to the White House press be reinstated, ruling that denying their access because of differing viewpoints was a clear violation of the First Amendment. If the majority wants to talk about attacks on the First Amendment in other parts of the world, they need to start right here in our administration. The Constitution is the foundation of this country. It is not meant to be trampled on for political or for business advantage. When you love something, you want to protect it, and you want to do what's best for it. You want to improve it. This means people will speak out and disagree on actions taken in their country and offer critiques of our leaders and, yes, the politicians. That's a constitutionally protected right. If the First Amendment is our guardrail, then this administration is truly trying to push us off the road. This government should be strong enough to accept any criticism without violating people's rights and offending the man in the White House. Professor Kay, I have a question, just one question for you. Based on what you've seen since this January, if our colleagues in the majority continue to pretend that our First Amendment rights are not under attack here at home, what could this mean for our country within the next 3 years?
Thank you for that question. I think that as we look at the current moment and the current situation for our media, for our universities, for people's access to information generally, particularly access to health information, I think it portends really very problematic and dark days ahead. Will we be able to have access to information that makes us informed parents or informed citizens, able to make voting decisions? I think that's the kind of future that we should expect if we don't recognize this situation. And I think that the tenor of the conversation could at least recognize that there are violations of fundamental rights to freedom of expression by this government right now. At least recognize it. I know that Democrats in the last 5 years called out the Biden administration from time to time when it did things that it thought was inconsistent with free speech values. I think having that kind of honest discussion and then some real constraint is where the committee should be heading.
Thank you so much. I encourage everyone that sees nothing wrong with this administration's retaliatory attacks on expressions of our First Amendment to consider just how much you are willing to give up to appease this man in the White House. At this time, I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to our ranking member.
There's no time left to yield. I think the gentlelady yields back. I do have to run to another commitment. I will be back in 20 minutes. We will have Mr. Knott take over as chair. Mr. Farage, if you have to leave, I look forward to visiting with you sometime later, hopefully.
I do, but thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony.
Could I just ask you to stay for one more, Mr. Farage?
The gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Farage, I enjoyed Milwaukee at the Harley-Davidson plant with you. That was a great evening. So, question for Mr. Price or Mr. Farage. One requirement for speech to be censored as a false communication offense under the OSA is that speech must cause non-trivial psychological or physical harm. What is non-trivial psychological harm?
I honestly don't know. And that's the problem with this legislation. It's so open-ended, it could mean anything. It leaves this entirely in the hands of local police forces to make their decisions. And the other disturbing element of this is that much within this act can be changed on a whim by a government minister, or at the other end, it can be interpreted by Ofcom in ways that it sees fit. You know, this is not good legislation. It's totally open-ended. It could literally mean whatever you want it to mean.
And local law enforcement, I guess, can make that decision on who they decide to prosecute and who they do not. Have we seen it tending one way or the other? I know we've talked about a couple of cases in here. Are there certain people being targeted, you think, with OSA?
Well, that's the fear, isn't it? The fear is that certain communities will be acted upon more harshly than other communities. That creates the impression of a two-tier country. That then breaks down trust in law and order, the democratic system, and everything else. I thought what was interesting overnight was that the boss, Sir Mark Rowley, the boss of the Metropolitan Police, has said, look, we arrested this guy at Heathrow because we had to, under the law, but they've thrown it back to the government to say, come on, can you just define more clearly what you want this legislation to mean? And that's why I think it's rotten legislation. It impacts us in ways that we can't yet foresee. It impacts potentially Americans and American businesses, and it needs to be gotten rid of, and we need to start again.
So, Mr. Price, talking about affecting American businesses, I guess Europe's 440 million people, the U.S. is 300 million people. How do these companies, what do you see down the road for these platforms, these social media platforms, these companies that feel like they have to try and comply if they're going to do business in Europe? If, in fact, we don't repeal this OSA thing, which I hope Mr. Farage is able to do that with his leadership at some point in the near future. So how does this play out for our companies, Mr. Price, and for free speech in Europe in general?
Well, on the corporate side, they're facing a really complicated piece of legislation, and as Mr. Farage outlined, with the provisions that are confusing in the Online Safety Act in the United Kingdom, there are similarly extremely confusing provisions in the Digital Services Act. So the mindset has to be one normally of compliance. One company has stood up to this whole regime and is challenging it at every level, and that's X. I hope others join and do the same, because the European Commission, though, really has been quite threatening. You'll recall the Thierry Breton letter, of course, about the Elon Musk's interview with then candidate President Trump. And you'll also see that other members of the Commission have made threatening remarks against companies as well on these so-called voluntary codes of conduct. When X and Google left one of the codes of conduct, a European commissioner said, well, of course they are voluntary, but we note that you've left them and we'll still hold you on the obligations. And you have Thierry Breton saying as well, you can run, but you can't hide if you leave the codes of conduct. So the whole thing is designed to force compliance, and the hammer that they have, of course, is these enormous crippling fines.
It's like 10% on global revenue, if I understand correctly. So for some of these companies, that's a pretty tremendous fine.
Absolutely, yeah, of turnover.
And I guess, could you, as we're looking through this, it's like almost like people could claim that they were offended or hurt. You hurt their feelings, and then all of a sudden you're a target of this investigation. Is that right, Mr. Farage? Is that kind of?
Yes, and frankly, under free speech, we should be allowed to cause offence.
And that
I should
happens
be able
quite
to
often,
offend
right?
you. You should be able to offend me. And provided we know what the limits are, and the limits I think we fully understand of incitement, for example, then we have to get back to, you know, a much freer way of living. And if people say rude things and we don't like them, well, we just ignore them and get on
Like
with our
today when
lives.
you were accused of Russian collusion, I guess. That was pretty offensive.
Well, I remember the Russia hoax very, very well. We had shades of it earlier on this morning, but,
That's what I was thinking.
but not much more than that, I'm pleased to say.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll yield back.
Thank you. And we're going to have to go, Mr. Chairman, but thank you very much.
Mr.
indeed.
Farage, you can blame
Mr.
it on
Farage.
me. One more. Oh, you're avoiding me.
Mr. Farage, thank you. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman.
I'm sorry to see you leave, Mr. Farage. I actually had much that we agree upon and was looking forward to your testimony, because it's very nice and refreshing to hear from my GOP colleagues that they are worried about authoritarianism. Mr. Biggs and Mr. McClintock both said that earlier. And I imagine, given what's going on in this country, when the president is sending the military into American cities, is weaponizing the Department of Justice to investigate his enemies, requiring loyalty oaths from all federal workers at risk of otherwise being fired, the list goes on and on. It is reassuring to hear that the Republicans who have remained stone silent about Trump's authoritarian takeover of our government here are actually concerned about authoritarianism. And I found it really heartening that Mr. Van Drew said, and I quote, "If we lose our First Amendment rights, we lose everything." Now, in his opening statement, Mr. Farage said, quote, "When the government starts regulating speech, it is rarely those that agree with the government who find themselves in court." And Mr. Farage, I'll ask you the question, is that similar to your concern about suppressing speech that disagrees with the government? Oh, Mr. Farage has left. Well, Mr. Raskin, I will then maybe just you can stand in for Mr. Farage for a minute here. I know you are a champion of free speech. I'm not sure it's the same free speech that Mr. Farage is supporting, but if this concern about the government regulating speech is because it is rarely those that agree with the government who find themselves in court, then you would think that Mr. Farage and all of our Republican colleagues would be very, very concerned if an administration here in the United States was investigating criminally individuals who made the colossal mistake of speaking out against the president. That would be a clear violation of Mr. Farage's principle. Is that right?
He was talking about the importance of political dissent. And this is a test, Mr. Goldman, I think, of our constitutional patriotism. To what extent are we willing to speak up for people who are the targets of government repression, even if we don't agree with what they're saying? A great example of that is our colleague, Congresswoman MacIver from New Jersey. I would hope that in a comparable circumstance, I would stand up for a Republican colleague who tries to exercise his or her oversight rights by going to a government facility on a prearranged visit and then gets caught up in the chaos and confusion outside, and they want to send her to jail for 30 years. I did stand up for our colleague from New York, I'm spacing his name.
Mr. Santos.
Mr. Santos,
friend.
because they wanted to expel him without his having a conviction or an ethics process. And I said that wasn't fair. So I think I passed a micro test there. I would hope some of our colleagues would say, no, don't prosecute